Hi everybody, welcome to the first in an 8-part series of short videos or podcasts if you'd rather listen to us in the car. We're going to be covering the really important new charity investment governance principles, and these were launched officially in January of this year. So we're going to share a link to the principles alongside these videos for those who haven't managed, but the address is CIGP.org.uk. These principles have been created by charities with the support of many stakeholders. The steering group for the project included the Charity Finance Group, who have hosted the project, NCVO, WCVA, ACVF, and the Charities Responsible Investment Network. The project was philanthropically funded by charities for the benefit of charities. And so just a shout out to those funders who are the Barrow Cadbury Trust, Friends Provident Foundation, City Bridge Foundation, Access, the Foundation for Social Investment, Joseph Rowntree, and the Climate Change Collaboration, made up of the Aurora Trust, the Mark Leonard Trust, and the JJ Charitable Trust. It's important also to note that the Charity Commission acted as an observer to the project, just to ensure that the principles accurately reflected regulatory requirements. And today, and for the whole series, I'll be joined by Gail Cunningham, who led on the development of these principles. So, Gail, for the first video, shall we start light and set the scene for what these principles are and who they've been developed for?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me as well. So just to set it across, the first and most important thing to say is that the principles are for charities in England and Wales. Where there are regulatory requirements, they mirror what the Charity Commission for England and Wales wants. Obviously, in Scotland and Northern Ireland, we hope those charities and maybe charities further afield will also find them useful, but the regulatory aspects we should emphasise are for England and Wales. To talk a little bit and set the scene a little bit, the steering group came together, and as you said, it was made up of those 5 charity membership bodies who between them represent over 18,000 charities across the UK. And those range from very small charities that might just have a little bit of cash in a bank account to obviously extremely large endowed foundations that have multi-million-pound investment portfolios. And that group came together in light of some of the changes that have been made to the Charity Commission's CC14 guidance and the Butler Sloss legal case. And they considered what are the really key issues for trustees and for the staff and committee members and volunteers who support those trustees. And so what was worked through in that was coming up with a resource that would help charities really think about their governance, really go back to first principles of what's important around investment governance. And they also looked to break that down, and a lot of that came out from a lot of the focus groups and the consultations that we did as part of the project. It's broken down into guidance for smaller charities that maybe just have cash in a bank account, smaller charities that have investment portfolios, and then larger charities, so that charities can really find what they need from the principles.
I mean, it's quite an exciting project, and just from my point of view, can you explain how a board who are looking at these principles would then look to implement them, into their governance structure?
Absolutely. So what people will see when they go on to the principles is that they are set out to mirror the Charity Governance Code. And we're hopeful that a lot of charities are already aware of the Charity Governance Code, already using that Charity Governance Code. And so we wanted charities to be able to use these in line with the Charity Governance Code. So there's 7 principles. What we would recommend charity trustees do, and the staff who work with those trustees, is focus on one of the principles at a time. Don't try and dive into everything all at once. Obviously, it's lovely to tick things off, and we love doing that, but don't just use it as a tick box exercise. Really try to work your way through. What I'd also emphasise is if you're a larger charity or any charity that has a finance and investment committee or some kind of delegated committee on the board, it's brilliant if that committee can get stuck in, but don't silo it just within that committee. So you want all trustees to be thinking about it. And we've tried to be really clear throughout the principles where it says all trustees, meaning this is something for the trustee board to discuss, versus where it says trustees, staff and committee members, and it can be people with delegated responsibility.
But what about those smaller charities, say, for example, a charity maybe with less than £1 million of investments, or an organisation that has limited internal resources or no committees at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And we really recognised that group. And we actually do quite a lot of testing, user testing with smaller charities. So there's a couple of different points for the smaller charities. So if a charity has less than £1 million and it's all held in bank accounts, and particularly, you know, if you're really at the end where you've got maybe less than 500,000 all held in bank accounts, you might want to just look at the smaller charities resource. And what that sets out is the key points from CC14. Obviously, the CC14 guidance does apply to all charities, but there's some really key points that guidance brings out for charities that mainly hold cash. In the resource we've provided, it references where parts of the principles or other resources that others have produced might be useful, but it does have the key points in there. It also has a section on what to consider, at what point you might want to consider going beyond holding money in cash. And obviously that might be where you're holding monies for a really long period of time, or you don't have a specific project that you need those monies for. Are there better returns you could be getting by investing in a way other than cash? We also look obviously at smaller charities and larger charities with investment portfolios. And in that sense, we mean investment portfolios where maybe you're investing in stocks and shares, bonds, alternatives, and so on. If you're a smaller charity with less than £1 million, you definitely want to look at the smaller charities' work if you've got an investment portfolio. And you can also see that it's split into must, recommend, and consider. And must is what the Charity Commission says you must be doing. Recommend is what the principals would recommend. And then consider is saying, look, here's other practice you can consider. And obviously for those smaller charities, a lot more of the practice is for consideration rather than recommended. If you're a larger charity, if you've got over 20 million, we would recommend you look at the larger charities practice. And again, that's split into must, recommend, consider. If you've got between 1 million and 20 million, that's where you might want to think about, well, do we have capacity to do this? Do we have staff in the team or trustees who are enthusiastic where we've got the capacity to look at some of the larger charity recommendations? Or actually, do we want to stick with what's recommended for the smaller charities and we don't really have capacity to go beyond that? And you'll be relieved to know as well that all of this is on the website. So it's all set out really clearly as to what charities might want to look at.
And it's great to have it so clear. But Gail, just from my boards that I am a trustee of, there's a lot of continuous improvement required. So have you got a time frame that you're sort of expecting boards to be reviewing this guidance over, maybe just to help the people watching?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing I would say is not quickly. So rather than saying to people, try and get it all done really quickly, I would say if it takes years, a few years, that's absolutely fine. Getting it right is more important than getting it done quickly. We are aware, and especially all the charity membership bodies on the steering group were very aware for a lot of their members that investments can be a really challenging area, and it can be the area the trustee board finds either challenging or for some trustees quite scary if they haven't got any investment understanding and knowledge. So what we say is look at those elements that you want the whole board to be involved in, look at those elements that can be delegated perhaps to those with more expertise in these areas. You don't want all of the trustees getting to all of the nitty-gritty, but there are some key issues you really want everyone involved in. And as I said, it follows the structure of the Charity Governance Code. So the Charity Investment Governance Principles can be used alongside the code. And just take some time to dive in and work out what you need. And some charities might be very advanced. They might say, well, we're already doing a lot of this. And in that case, I think it's just really important for the whole trustee board to feel really confident that they are. For other charities, they might say, look, this is a real tool for improvement and encouragement. It's got lots of examples and explainers in there. So it's not just what you need to do, but it's also got explanations about how you might do that, how you might enact some of the best practice, and how other resources that you might go to find that out. So the main thing I would say is don't rush it, take your time, think about what your charity really needs to focus on in terms of getting its investment governance right.
Yes, it's such an important thing, isn't it, not to rush something that is as important as these principles are for boards. So we'll leave it there for this video, but in the next video, we're going to get straight into considering the 7 principles, and we're going to start on the purpose of investments. And we're going to look at what this principle means, the rationale of the principle, and we'll also helpfully give some guidance on implementation, maybe some tips from some case studies, positive outcomes, or some complications for implementing. And if you have enjoyed watching this video and you want to subscribe so that you can see the next ones when they come out, you can head to broadstone.co.uk and there'll be a link and you can subscribe. Brilliant, everybody. Thanks. Until next time.